Morning, morning everyone. Hi Rahul, good to see you back. Good morning from the UK. Good afternoon to you over there. Morning Steph, good to see you again. All right, let's get going. Looks like everything's working okay. Right then, so last week we finished off looking at the bicep. Let's just go over that one again. Yeah, if you didn't watch last week, then have a catch up last week. And yeah, and then you'll be in sync with this one. All right, let's go. Okay, so just do a quick review of the bicep. I think some of the key things for me were the fact that doesn't just attach into that radial tuberosity, it kind of spreads out over the fascia of the forearm. Just move me there. Here we go. So here is here's your bicep on the top, brachialis underneath. We'll have a look at that in a sec. And then two heads to your bicep, pec and a deltoid, which overlay those in the front of the shoulder. So if we peel back the deltoid and then peel back the pec, then you can see underneath. Whilst we're doing that, this is a really good image for if you do imaging. So if you do an ultrasound image on someone, then you can see overlying tissues when you scan the bicep tendon, and it's because there are overlying tissues. So you'll have the deltoid and the pec, and as you scan down the bicep, you'll be able to see where the pec attaches as well. So you can quite clearly see those attachments and the layers of those. Good morning, Imi. Good to see you back. Hey, Caroline. I know it's lovely weather here as well. Tris and Claire, I think that is. I think we established that last week. Good to see you all back. Yeah, so we got biceps tendon coming up here, long head, and then the short head going off towards the coracoid process there. So that piece just on the scapula, coming through to the front of the chest wall. There's the head of the humerus, just there, shaft of the humerus here. So morning, Penny. Haven't seen you for a while as well. That's good to see you back. So yeah, long head there, short head there, and you can see some of the other attachments onto that coracoid as well. There's your pec minor just there as well. Here we go. So that's the attachment for the short head, and then up it comes, long head through the bicipital groove, and then up over the shoulder. And what's really interesting, you might find it interesting, is the capsule of the shoulder obviously surrounds all this area here. So the bicep tendon will pierce through that capsule. So if there is any inflammation in the capsule, some kind of intra-articular issue, then the swelling can seep out of the bicep tendon, and it will run along the tendon here. So sometimes you'll get bicep tendon discomfort because it's in a sheath, and as the fluid increases in volume, obviously it can't go anywhere, so it starts to irritate that sheath, and think it's a bicep issue, but it may be something actually in the joint that's causing that discomfort. And this is why Notoriously, special tests for the shoulder are not very good, because there's loads of different structures that can be irritated, that can be generating symptoms. Been hiding my mobile in past episodes as can't remember how to log in. No problem. No worries, Penny. Well, it's good to have you back. So there's your bicipital groove, and there's the attachment of the biceps. Ooh, just rewind that slightly and move me out of the way so you can see that picture. So have a look down here. We've got the kind of textbook images down here. So supraglenoid tubercle just there. Yeah, so the reason for that picture is because where the long head of the biceps attaches is the superior part of the glenoid, so supraglenoid tubercle. And it's not just bone in the living body. There is a labrum around it as well, which is a connective tissue that helps to deepen the socket. And that is where your bicep muscle attaches. And if you have a pull there, a tear there, then that is called a slap lesion. So it's a superior labral anterior to posterior tear. So usually it's when your arm gets wrenched back, or like in rugby, that kind of thing. So if you go in for a tackle and your arm gets pulled back, that can basically rip the bicep tendon away from the supraglenoid tubercle, and then it takes a bit of the labrum with it as well. So that's a slap lesion. So obviously two head to your biceps, and then we've got this bit here, this aponeurosis, which when it's not dissected, you'll see a lot better. There's the radial tuberosity, and then yeah, aponeurosis again, and here we go. So that's the extension of the aponeurosis in a fresh dissection, and you can see that that bicep attaches to your whole forearm. Okay, so it wraps around to distribute the forces generated by the bicep. Brings about flexion, and then when the hand is pronated, brings about supination as well, which is, remember, pronated forward like that, and then bowl of soup, there's your supination. Cool. So that's where we finished last week. That's where we were. So we're going to try and crack on with the rest of the muscles around this area. And how many have we got? We've got about another 6 or 7 to do. And then if we do get time, then we'll move on to the blood supply and the nerve supply for this region as well. So a continuation from the shoulder. So the one that we see that we've seen already on the video was the brachialis muscle, which was underneath the bicep. And so if you do injure your bicep, usually long head that gets injured, you can still flex your elbow because you have brachialis, and also you have the short head as well. Flexion of the elbow is really important because we need to be able to bring our hand to our mouth so we can eat. And we've got several muscles that can bring about that motion, which is really useful. So the distal attachment is the distal anterior part of the proximal attachment is the distal anterior humerus. So this bit here, and then what we used to call the insertion. So the distal attachment is the coronoid process of the ulna. And if you remember back last week, we were talking about that, the shape of the ulnar bone, and around the joints, you've got that little bump. And then we had a coronoid fossa, where as you go into flexion, coronoid fossa gets filled with the coronoid, and that is the muscle that attaches to it. So yeah, we've got flexion of the elbow, muscle particularly important when the forearm is pronated, because that helps to you got mechanical advantage in that position. And then we've got it's the muscle for speed. So if we have a look at it, really, really short, really wide muscle. So a very, very powerful elbow flexor. This one, let's have a look at the video for that. I'll just tee this one up. Bear with me a second. Here we go. So this is brachialis or brachialis, depending on what you want to call it, where you come from. So we've seen the bicep over the top. We saw a little bit of the brachialis underneath. Here we go, and that's where it is there. Okay, so again, as I was saying last time, these videos are usually people that are in their 70s and 80s, so the musculature isn't that big. And you can see that with this brachialis. Normally in someone in their kind of 20s, 30s, 40s, if they're pretty active, then these muscles would be a lot bigger. So it goes underneath your biceps brachii, which is what we've just seen. And again, it's more of a broad contact than just on that specific coronoid area. So that there's the attachment on the distal humerus, and then there's the attachment down there on the ulna. Okay, and that specific point there where it goes there, that's the coronoid process, but it's that kind of whole raised area. So it attaches to that ridge, and then there we go. So as it contracts, it will bring about flexion of the elbow. Pronation, supination can take place whilst the brachialis flexes the elbow. So we've got the biceps brachii and the brachialis working together. So brachialis and biceps can flex, but whilst it's flexing, so brachialis can then take over that role. You can then pronate and supinate using the biceps brachii and some of the muscles as well. We'll talk about those in a sec. But yes, we can pronate and supinate whilst the elbow is flexed, because we've got several muscles that are able to do those jobs. Okay, cool. So that's your brachialis just underneath there. It's quite a I think it's a muscle involved in a lot, well, I say a lot, a number of elbow issues, and often confused for usually kind of golfer's elbow type issues. So something to the only way really though that you can elicit some discomfort, because there aren't really any tests for it apart from flexion, obviously. But then if flexion hurts, there are loads of muscles that do flexion, so you can't know which one. But you can use your palpation to get underneath biceps brachii and have a good old poke into brachialis to see if that's causing any discomfort. So it's knowing the kind of layers of anatomy can help in that respect. I just moved me out of the way again. We've got brachioradialis next. So remember, brachio was the brachial region of the humerus, and then radialis, it goes along the radius. This muscle is particularly useful for neurological testing. So if you're doing reflex testing for the forearm, then what you do is you aim your patella hammer around this area here. So that's the musculotendinous junction, and if you get it in the right place, then you'll get an elbow reflex. Okay, so that's a really good, well, it is the muscle to test rather than a really good one. But you're looking at how to pinpoint this area. So if you flex the elbow and then feel along the radius, you can feel the bulk of the brachioradialis. You can feel it. So you just tense up against that movement, and then you come to the end of the muscle belly. So you have a feel along to the end of the muscle belly as it just starts to thin, and then that is where you aim for your reflex testing. So if you're just starting out doing reflex testing, that's a good way to find it, because if you're slightly off of this tendon, it's just you're not going to elicit a response. So you may think that there's a problem with the reflexes when there isn't. So yeah, being able to activate this muscle is useful to be able to feel it, and then come to the end where the MTJ is, and then that's where you do your strike. It's very, very strong at the elbow joint, effective in carrying heavy loads, strongest in a neutral position. Okay, so when the arms are in a neutral, not pronated, supinated position. So to activate it, and this is what I do for reflex testing, we get 90 degrees of flexion hand in neutral and in a kind of shaking hands position, and then you resist flexion, and you'll be able to see the muscle just pop up on the radial aspect of the forearm. Okay, so that's just a little tip if you do that kind of stuff. And let's have a look at brachioradialis. Here we go. Have to excuse me, I've got a bit of a chesty cough this week. Okay, so that's the image that we've just seen. And then we'll have a look at the cadaveric specimen. Here we go. So annoyingly, it's on the opposite side, but there it is there. Okay, so it attaches quite high up onto the supracondylar ridge, and there's and another muscle that attaches just below that. We'll have a look at that when we come into the wrist, but there's the attachment there. So it's quite high up on the humerus, on that lateral aspect, and then usually you can elicit a reflex response around this area here. Comes down onto the radial styloid. Right, we're just pause that there. There we go. So there's the muscle there. Okay, and you can just about make out the where it turns into a tendon there. So if you get that flexion, contraction, activate the muscle belly so you can really feel the bulk of the muscle. Feel down that muscle belly, and then you get to that point. It's around about mid ulnar humerus area, ulnar radius area. Okay, so around that area there, and then that's where you do your hammer tap. So it brings them out flexion. And is that it for that video? Yeah, I just wanted to show you this where it attaches on the radial styloid. Just there. So you see that blue area there. So the radial styloid, if you get your hand in that position there, and you on the thumb side is where the radius is, and there's a bump on your wrist. Okay, you should be able to feel that bump, quite a prominent bump. It's basically the kind of side sticking out section of the radial bone, and that's your radial styloid. It's called a styloid because it looks like a pen nib. Yeah, so like the stylus, the old name for a pen nib. So that is that blue area just there. So it doesn't influence the wrist at all. Okay, so it will influence pronation, supination, because it attaches onto the radius, but because it doesn't go below into the carpal rose, it won't do anything in the wrist. Okay, so it will only act on the pronation, supination movements. Excuse me. So that's it, just down there. Okay, perfect. Right, so that's your brachioradialis and the usefulness of it as well. Now, this one's a good one. This one always creates some, especially if you work in the fitness industry, some very strange reasons for changing hand position for exercises. Okay, so knowing the anatomy is really useful to be able to challenge these kind of things. So if we have a look, we've got 3 heads to the tricep. So triceps means head. We've got a long head, which attaches onto the infraglenoid tubercle. So that's the bottom of the socket of the ball and socket for your shoulder. Okay, so we've got one that attaches there. We've got lateral head, posterior proximal half of the humerus. So that's on the back of your humerus bone. And then the medial head, posterior surface of the distal humerus. Okay, so another head like tucked behind there. So we've got that inferior glenoid area, and then 2 attachments onto the humerus. So they all attach distally on the olecranon, which is the pointy bit of your elbow. Okay, so the elbow point that we were talking about when we were looking at the bony landmarks. Now in the gym, may have heard this a number of times, where they change their hand position into either a pronated or a supinated position to change the angle to hit different tricep heads. Okay. Now, if you think about that logically, when you pronate and supinate, the movement is coming from the radial head. Okay. There is nothing that changes at the olecranon. There's no change there at all. So whether you have your hand pronated or supinated with elbow extension, it won't change what happens with these tricep muscles. The thing that could potentially is a change in the position of the shoulder. So if you did elbow extension with shoulder flexion, with an element of internal rotation or external rotation, you could elongate one of those heads more than another, which could then bias one of the heads more than another. But again, it would probably be it would be this one. It wouldn't be this one. These two. Okay, so the lateral head and the medial head, they attach onto the humerus, so they only go from there to there. So that won't matter what position you put your shoulder in. It's just this one. Okay, so because this one attaches onto the shoulder blade, by moving your arm around, that will change the position of that muscle, and that is it. Okay, so yeah, quite an interesting conversation I've had on many a fitness website when people or Facebook group when people are recommending tricep exercises, and they do loads of different exercises with the hand in different positions, and yeah, it doesn't have the effect that they think it does. But there we are. Right, let's have a look at this one. So triceps, here we go. So 3 heads, triceps. So that's the image that we've just seen. And here we go. So there's the attachment on the olecranon. Really kind of broad tricep tendon there as well. I'm just going to go back, pause that there. Right. Now you can also elicit a tendon response, a stretch reflex from the triceps. So what we try and do is have the arm usually in an abducted position with the elbow flexed, and then you'd use the patella hammer and you'd hit the tricep tendon. You can see it's quite broad, yeah? But you want to be around musculotendinous junction area here. So it's actually a lot higher than you think, because a lot of people will hit around the elbow and that could be quite painful because you just whack it on the back of someone's olecranon, and you don't really elicit a reflex there, but it's a little bit higher up. So if we get someone to contract their triceps again, you have a feel for the bulk of the muscle, and then as the belly of the muscle starts to come in a bit, then that's roughly where the musculotendinous junction is, and that's the best place to hit it, just there, just because of the amount of stretch receptors that are in that particular region. So yeah, so around about that area there. So here's your triceps, all kind of like look as if they merge into one. There's your deltoid just up here. So there's the long head. There's the lateral head, and then tucking under is the medial head. So that's where the long head attaches, just up into there. Yeah. So that's the one that you could change the effect on by moving the shoulder. Lateral head and the medial head has got a massive attachment point. I'm just going to pause that there. Just want you to pay attention to where the red lines are on the bone. So if I can pause it in the right place, yeah, around about there. So we can see that the red line there for the medial head, and then one there for the lateral head. And can you see this gap in between? That's important for later, because a nerve sits in that gap, and it's called the spiral groove. Okay, so remember that one for later, where the nerve is protected by the triceps either side of it, so the lateral and the medial heads. And then, yeah, medial head all the way down, spiral groove, there you go. I've given it away. Radial nerve. Save that one for later. And then there's the attachment on the olecranon tricep tendon here. And then there it is there. So it doesn't matter what you do with pronation, supination, because it doesn't affect the olecranon position. Okay. There you go. All right, so that's your triceps. One to go and search those fitness groups for, and see if there's any misinformation out there. Okay, would be something that years ago I would have done as a naive gym instructor, because I would have just believed my elders who had really good triceps that that's what you had to do. How things change. My triceps are rubbish now, and but I've got a bit more knowledge. Okay, so we've got supinator next. Can you guess what this one does? All right, so we've got supination of the elbow. That's its only job. Attaches on the radial collateral ligaments, the annular ligament, and then the supinator crest of the ulna. So it's got quite a broad attachment point. And then insertion or distal lateral surface of proximal shaft of the radius. Okay, it's got to attach onto the radius to bring about that supination. Rahul's asked, is genetic affects muscle belly tendon distribution means big belly short tendon? Yeah. Yeah, it's mainly genetics. Well, it is genetics. Yeah, you can increase the size of those particular structures depending on the training that you do, but they're going to be where they are. Yeah, so you're going to be genetically predisposed to having a long tendon or not. I mean, sometimes, God, we do scans for Achilles tendon. And it's absolutely huge, and people just don't realize how far it comes up the back of the leg. If they're very well defined, you can often just see the muscle bellies anyway. But if they're not well defined, then it all looks like one. Yeah. So but yeah, quite often you'll find that the musculotendinous junctions are a lot higher, especially triceps and Achilles that are found than you think. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at supinator. Excuse me. Here we go. All right. So yeah, the only job for this one is supination. So bowl of soup. That's all it does. And there it is. Okay, so you can see it's got quite a broad attachment coming up around this this part of the elbow here. So this is on the lateral side because of the attachments on the ulna, and then up into the ligaments around the radius, and then on the lateral surface of the radius, so that when it shortens, okay, so at the moment that's pronated, but when it shortens, it will rotate that forearm around. Hopefully it's going to show you. Yeah, there we go. So bowl of soup. There we go. And then the muscles on the opposite side there we go. I put the label in. Was pronator teres. So we're going to have a look at that one in a second. But the supinator and the pronator teres, they obviously work together to assist with pronation and supination of the forearm. Okay, so yeah, deep branch of ulnar nerve will, radial nerve will go underneath your supinator, and then as it shortens, rotation, and then there's your pronator teres there. So you can see they kind of match each other. Yeah, and then pronator just there. So we've had a sneak peek of that one already. So if you remember that the radial nerve comes under this one, that can be really useful, because you can get some irritation of the radial nerve, especially with people who play racket sports. So if there's a lot of trying to keep like isometric resistance of pronation, supination, because they don't want their forearm just flopping all around the place whilst they're playing tennis or squash or whatever it is. So they've got to maintain a position. So supinator and pronator teres are going to be working isometrically to maintain the position of that radius, depending on which angle of the racket they need. So they're going to be working quite hard. They'll start to hypertrophy, and it can cause some compression around the radial nerve. And again, quite often you can have radial nerve kind of sensitivity, like a mechanosensitivity, brought about by those kind of issues that mimic lateral epicondylopathy, so a tennis elbow. Yeah, so you can do nerve tension tests to differentiate between whether it's a radial nerve issue or whether it's a muscle problem and an insertional tendinopathy problem. Okay, so they run really close to each other. Just pop that through again. Okay, so yeah, radial nerve underneath that little tunnel. There's supination, and then there's pronator teres on the other side, which will bring about pronation. And then as we spin it round, there's your bicep tendon just there. There's brachialis. And then the bicep tendon will also bring about supination as well. And there it is there. Okay, so it's like a hammock, kind of scooping the bone around, working with supinator to do that job. Okay, cool. What time are we at? Doing good for time. Nearly there, last few. This one's a really small little muscle. Again, couple of pronunciations, however you want to say it. Anconius or anconeus, whatever you want. Okay, so we've got an attachment here. There's the radial head, so this must be the lateral side, and then there's the ulna just there as well. Okay, so we've got the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, but a little bit more, I say a little bit more posterior. They all kind of merge in. Okay, so when you see, when we go onto the wrist and we see all of those wrist extensors, they will all merge into this area. Okay, but if someone has got specific posterior discomfort on that lateral epicondyle, it could be anconeus that's causing it, potentially, maybe a tendinopathy there. So we've got the olecranon process and lateral ulnar shaft. Yeah, so up on the process here and then down the shaft. So it's got quite a wide base and then a thin insertion point just on that lateral epicondyle. Right, here's Anconius. I'm going to flick between the two, Anconius and Anconeus. Okay, so this one is another elbow extensor. There's your radial head, tricep tendon just there. So we've seen those already. There's your anconeus underneath, just there. So really small on the lateral ulnar up onto the lateral epicondyle. So small, broad muscle. Literally, the contraction of that will bring about elbow extension. There it goes there. Okay, so again, it could be you get some discomfort on extension, so you're thinking, oh, that'll be tricep tendon. But if you have a palpate a little bit lower and on the lateral ulnar, then maybe tenderness there or on the insertion on the back of the lateral epicondyle. So it could be anconeus that's tendinopathic at that point. Cool. Last two. So we've got pronator teres. We've already seen this one working in conjunction with supinator. Now, the interesting thing with this one, remember supinator had that tunnel where the radial nerve went underneath it, and we could get compression of the radial nerve around that area. Here, the median nerve goes between the two heads of pronator teres. So again, if you are playing a sport where it requires a lot of isometric contraction, or you work in a job where there's a lot of pronation, supination, or resisted type movements, then it could affect the median nerve, and it can be a compression point for carpal tunnel. So again, another place to have a look, and it's not really carpal tunnel, but the symptoms of it. Yeah, so the neurological symptoms in these three fingers, a little bit of that one. So it's another point to check along the pathway of the nerve, because this is another compression point. So let's have a look at this. Yes, we've got medial epicondyle of the humerus, and then common flexor tendon, coronoid process of the ulna. So we've got quite a few, um, uh, like a broad attachment point, but it's split into two heads. Okay, and then the distal attachment is the middle of the lateral surface of the radius, and we saw that with the supinator video. It's basically the opposite side to supinator. So supinator obviously brings about supination, and then the pronator will bring about pronation. Okay, so let's have a look at pronators. Here we go. And again, another thing you can do to differentiate with these areas, especially if you think there's a median nerve involvement around here, is nerve tension testing, because quite often you'll get symptoms on the nerve tension test in the forearm. Okay, so that's where the nerve is sensitive, and yeah, it may be pronator teres that's contributing to that. So we've included in this video as well pronator quadratus, which is down towards the wrist. So we'll do this on the wrist section, but we need to put these two together because they both do a similar kind of job. But the pronator quadratus obviously distally, pronator teres more proximally. Okay, let's have a look at these. So there's your pronator teres. The attachment on the medial epicondyle just there, coronoid process just here, so very close to where brachialis comes in, and then it flips over the radius. Just pause that there. Yeah, so over the radius so that it can bring about that once it gets stretched, it can then bring about pronation. Okay, and then in between the two heads, that's where your median nerve will go. All right, so when we look at the nerve supply for this area, we'll go through that. Just checking the time then. I don't think we're going to be able to do that today. We'll definitely do it next week. So yeah, in between those two is where your median nerve will come through, and then there's the attachment on the radius just there. So shortening that muscle will bring about pronation, as it will with the pronator quadratus down here as well. Okay, so these guys work together. So you got medial ulnar onto the distal radius, and again, contraction of that muscle, the only job is literally to move into pronation. Okay, cool. And then last one, I believe we've got one more to go. Oh no, I've got one more video left, I think. Bear with me a sec. Or did I do them all? Oh no, I did do them all. We have got time. Apologies. I thought there was one more left, but yeah, I'd include it. I hadn't included that one. Perfect. So those are all the muscles around the elbow. Obviously, there are more muscles around the elbow, but they act on the wrist. So that's why I've left them out of this particular session. Right, let's bring this slide in. Here we go. So we're going to have a look at the nerves and the blood supply for the elbow region as well. And first thing we'll have a look at is the blood supply. And we've got the obviously deoxygenated blood through the vein network, and then oxygenated blood through the arterial network. And around the elbow, we've got these key veins. And if anybody's ever had any blood tests done before, these will be the veins that they will go for to draw blood. Okay, so we've got all of these veins which are very, very close to the surface of the skin, so they're easy to draw blood from. Let's get rid of that one and do that one. Okay, hopefully this should be the vein network. Nope. Bear with me a sec. Let's try that one. Why isn't that one working? Hold on a second. Doesn't like that one. Doesn't like that one either. That's really annoying. Okay. I'll do the videos next week. So these are the this is the vein network. Okay, so we'll have a look at the videos for these next week. They're just not teeing up this morning for some reason. And then this is the arterial supply. So we've had a look at this in quite some detail when we looked at the shoulder, and we were focused specifically on the subclavian artery, and then as it turned into the axillary artery and then down into the brachial artery. So now we're picking it up as the brachial artery around this part of the arm just here. There were some offshoots off of the artery a little bit higher up. So we had these circumflex arteries that go around the humeral head and supply the humeral head with blood. And then as we come down here into this region here, we've got a split of the arteries so that they supply the different parts of the hand and the wrist. Okay, so we're going to focus on this area here, but we've got a radial and an ulnar artery split. Okay, so radial artery obviously following along the radius bone, and then ulnar artery along the ulnar bone, and then when it reaches the hand, and we'll cover this on the when we look at the wrist and the hand, they both link together. Okay, so if you have a disruption to the radial supply, the ulnar supply will kick in and it will keep your hand oxygenated with blood, and then vice versa as well. All right, so they both link in together. There's a really cool little network. There's a little test you can do as well when we get to the wrist. We'll show you this test where you can check that blood supply as well. But the radial artery is where you will feel the radial pulse. So the best thing to do with that is you get your wrist, you flex your wrist, and then you should be able to feel or see, at least anyway, the tendons of the flexors. And then if you go on the thumb side of those tendons, that's where the radial artery is. And if you go on the little finger side, so the ulnar side, then that's where the ulnar artery will be in there. Okay, so you can use, if you just bring your fingers together and then flex your wrist forward, it will bring up all of the tendons, and then you just go either side of those to be able to palpate the artery. Okay, so we'll have a look at the videos for those when they're working next week. Okay, cool. That's it for today. So we've got all the muscles done, which is good. Just bring that back. There we go. All the muscles done around the elbow region. So we'll finish off next week with the blood supply and the nerves. Do a little bit of recap on the muscles as well, and then we'll start moving down into the wrist and the hand. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our Learn Anatomy journey. So we've gone through the body 3 times. This is the 3rd time through, and we always start at the feet and then come all the way through and then finish on the hands. So we're nearly at that finish point of the hands this time around, and then we'll start again. We'll go to the feet again. You are welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in on the live session. Thanks for your questions, and I'll see you hopefully without a cough next Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.